It's time for Eye on Africa. Welcome to those of you watching here in France and around the world. Tonight, 3 former rebels were killed and up to 20 people wounded in the Ivory Coast as a protest over overdue bonus pay promised by the government takes a violent turn. An ongoing investigation into the murder of 2 UN workers in Congo has sparked a separate inquiry after tapes emerged that could implicate a former minister in the country's militia violence. And our correspondent in Nigeria meets with the chief mediator in the negotiations that led to the release of 83 Chibok girls kidnapped by Boko Haram on Saturday. Let's begin in the Ivory Coast, where former rebels are fighting a battle on a different front. 3 demobilized combatants were killed and around 20 people wounded in Bouaké as a protest over some 27,000 euros in outstanding bonus pay, promised but not delivered by the government, took a violent turn. In Abidjan, France 24's Arnaud Froger explains what's behind this latest flare-up.
Ivorian police used force to put an end to a protest in Bouaké. Since Monday, access to the second largest city of Côte d'Ivoire was blocked by hundreds of ex-rebel fighters. Just like the mutiny soldiers, they are asking for a bonus payment, a reward they think they deserve because they helped President Alassane Ouattara to take office back in 2011 at a time when his election was disputed by Laurent Gbagbo's regime. On Tuesday morning, the police has been using tear gas, but also firearms, according to the protesters, who claimed to be unarmed. Several people were killed and wounded. According to the Interior Minister, today's violence was mainly caused by a grenade launched by ex-rebels, which accidentally exploded. Tuesday's protesters are part of a group of 6,000 demobilized fighters. They're all asking for 27,000 euros each, but the government is absolutely not willing to pay these bonuses. Last week, Ivorian authorities already had to pay a huge amount of money to put an end to a 4-day mutiny.
Congo's Attorney General has opened an investigation into former Development Minister Clément Kankou over allegations he played a role in militia violence in the country's central Kasai province. The announcement follows an article published by the New York Times on Saturday detailing a recording of a phone call between murdered UN human rights investigator Zeda Catalan and Kankou. On the tapes, the ex-minister is heard approving of violence perpetrated by the Cameroon and Sapu militia. Catalan, her colleague Michael Sharp, they were both killed in March on a fact-finding mission in Congo. Thomas Nicolon, our correspondent in Kinshasa, put these allegations directly to Congressman Clément Kankou.
Congressman Clément Kankou refutes all the allegations that he might have played a part in the clashes that have been taking place in the Kasai region for the last few months. A couple of days ago, the New York Times revealed the existence of 2 audio files that seem to indicate that Clément Kankou might have been collaborating with militiamen. The former minister refutes all the allegations.
Je suis convaincu que toute la lumière sera faite dans cette affaire et que justice sera rendue aux nombreuses victimes d'exactions abominables dans les Kasai, y compris les 2 experts des Nations Unies. Pour ma part, je ne laisserai personne, quel que soit par des artifices, salir ni mon image, ni la mémoire de ces nombreuses victimes qui attendent réparation. Je vous remercie.
Clément Kankou wouldn't take any questions during his press conference on Tuesday, but his lawyer did say that it is still too early to tell if the audio recordings are indeed authentic. Earlier on Tuesday, the general prosecutor announced the start of an investigation on the audio recordings.
South Sudan's protracted political crisis is continuing to play out. Rebels led by former Vice President Riek Machar have dismissed the call for a national dialogue announced by President Salva Kiir as a campaign to derail the peace process. On Monday, Kiir called for a unilateral ceasefire and convened a steering committee to probe the aspirations of the people in South Sudan. However, he was criticised for excluding Machar from participating. While the rebels welcomed the call to lay down arms, they called its sincerity into question, accusing the president of reneging on previous ceasefire deals. Ethiopia's Tedros Adhanom will be the first African to lead the World Health Organization. A majority of health ministers from 186 member states voted for Dr. Tedros on Tuesday over nominees from Britain and Pakistan. The 52-year-old is best known for having dramatically reduced child mortality and opening reproductive healthcare centres when he was Ethiopia's healthcare minister. Margaret Chan will end 10 years at the helm of the agency on June 30. She leaves behind a legacy strained by West Africa's Ebola epidemic. Looking ahead, Dr. Tedros has pledged to pursue health insurance in even the poorest nations. Now to Nigeria. 82 of the Chibok girls kidnapped by Boko Haram were reunited with their parents for the first time in over 3 years on Saturday in Abuja. The girls were freed in exchange for 5 Boko Haram commanders held by authorities. Now, Nigerian lawyer Zana Mustafa mediated the negotiations between the government and extremists in the forests of Sambisa. He's also created a foundation to support families caught on the front line of the conflict, as our correspondent Moses Gomez explores in this France 24 report.
Once a week, these women meet up in the playground of this school in Maiduguri. Widows and mothers, they each have at least one child that attends the school. They're widows of fallen Nigerian army soldiers and of Boko Haram insurgents.
Our weekly meeting aims to promote unity, to help each other and to live in peace with one another. And if something bad happens to one of us, like an illness, we will visit her and pray for her.
Zana Mustafa's guiding principle is to bring together and unite people that are fundamentally opposed. His foundation welcomes the orphans of Boko Haram fighters killed in the rebellion. Zana Mustafa became a mediator during the Boko Haram insurgency and didn't hesitate to enter the armed group's headquarters to negotiate the release of the Chibok schoolgirls.
I have been doing a peace work for the past 1 decade, and that, if you are talking of de-radicalization, we have been doing it ever since the insurgency started. So we were able to go up for the mediation.
Zana Mustafa's success hasn't changed the goals of the foundation. Education for all remains its priority. This classroom was built in Fori in Maiduguri. Every morning from Monday to Friday, these children have access to basic education. Many of them live in a camp for displaced people very close to the school.
I really want them to be better people in the future. They have gone through a lot due to the Boko Haram insurgency. So I want to teach them how to read, how to write, so they can have a better future and also express themselves in a better ways.
To integrate, educate and curb the influence of the armed Islamist group, Zana Mustafa and his team are convinced their foundation will have a long-lasting impact, one day at a time.
South African President Jacob Zuma will no longer be welcome to address any hostile gatherings. That's according to the country's largest labour federation. COSATU has called for Zuma to resign as head of the state, saying it no longer trusts or supports his leadership. Lack of confidence deepened by Zuma's decision to fire the country's popular finance minister, causing the rand to plummet to new lows. COSATU's break marks the first time in the country's history that an ANC president has faced such a ban from an alliance partner. And finally, people across the political spectrum in South Africa are lamenting the slow pace of land reform. Frustration over poor living conditions in informal settlements is driving up unlawful land grabs, as Nicolas Jamin explains in this report.
Residents of Tshwane municipality are frustrated. They say they live in overcrowded areas and want to move into what they consider free spaces. But local authorities say it would be an invasion of land belonging to private owners. More than 2 decades after the end of apartheid rule, most of the country's land is still in the hands of the minority white population.
The biggest issue for us right now is land. That's it. We want land and services, and to get electricity and water so that we can live our lives, and so that our children can live like all the others.
They've been saying land is available, but where is it? We've nowhere to go. We live in these shacks that burn easily. All they give us are useless small solar systems that don't even supply power to a stove, but only sustain the lights and charge phones.
In Africa's most industrialized nation, 1 in 5 families still live in informal dwellings. The mayor of the city says he cannot help people who settle on someone else's private property.
You have a lot of people that occupy land illegally and sometimes even on private piece of land, and then demand that the municipalities then supposed to be providing for services in those pieces of land. Now, it's impossible for us to go and invest on property that doesn't belong to the city.
President Jacob Zuma says he's committed to the principle of land redistribution. But he also says South Africa will not embark on lawless land grabs against white-owned farms like those that happened in Robert Mugabe's neighbouring Zimbabwe.
And that's all for this edition of Eye on Africa. We'll be back with the next round of headlines from the continent in the next hour. There's more news coming up. Do stay tuned to France 24.